Hi, welcome to Your Business, Your Rules. I'm Kat LeBlanc. This is the podcast for people who want to start and grow an online location-independent business so they can live a life of freedom and choice on their own terms. Welcome to episode 6, How I Started My Business. We've had lots of content so far on Your Business, Your Rules. Content is incredibly helpful, especially if it helps you understand things in new ways and move forward, which is what I'm always striving for. Story, though, is also important. Research has shown repeatedly that hearing stories activates more of the brain than just hearing facts. And I really want you to be either starting this journey or making this journey more you. So even regardless of what scientists say, I find that if I can hear someone else's ups and downs and hear the backstory behind the quote-unquote overnight success, it really helps me see how I could do this or do this better, how I could make changes, and it gives me food for thought. So today I'm sharing a little bit more about how my business came into being. And let's be clear, this is not to boast. There are certainly people out there who have achieved a lot more than me. But it's to give you the insight that you can turn into action for yourself. And hopefully you can see yourself in this journey. Honestly, I'm not the kind of person who wants to constantly talk about themselves, right? And this is a little uncomfortable for me to share my story. And this is just the beginning part of my story. But I think it's important because I want to show it's not all, rainbows and butterflies. It's highs and lows. And after a while, you do get to a pretty amazing place, but it is a journey. So let's start the journey of starting my business. I started my first business in 2012. And if you're thinking because you've done nothing entrepreneurial until now, it's not in your blood, I would argue with that. You may have just never thought about it before, and that was certainly the case for me. Instead of wanting to go into business until that point, which honestly I didn't even know was a possibility, I went about trying to retire early and optimize my work life instead. I always loved to travel and experience more of the world, so my first way of molding my work life into what I wanted for my life on a broader scale was to work abroad. I sat down when I was about 16 and looked at the career book at school and took a skills and personality test as well to work out what could I do so that I could manage to travel. And the answer that the test came back with was to become a computer programmer. And at first, I was really disappointed with what the book/test told me because I had imagined becoming a graphic designer or, something more glamorous. And now in the internet age, that certainly would have worked, but this was the 80s at the time. And my dad was a programmer and it all looked like really boring to me. He used to make these adventure games and it would be, you're in a room, there's a sword and a door, what do you want to do? And, it's all text on black and green. And this did not look like my future to me. But at the same time, it still seemed like a way that I could get what I wanted. So I decided to go down this path. So we fast forward to the year 2000 and I managed to get myself a gig in Germany as a software engineer after a gap year where I lived in Brazil for 6 months. And I was imagining that I'd stay in Germany for, about a year, then I'd move to France and then maybe I'd go somewhere else, maybe the Netherlands, and I'd just, start my adventure of exploring the world. But this didn't actually work out how I had planned, which I guess is how a lot of life goes, right? Essentially, Germany was just too good to me. I could go on weekends away to anywhere in Europe, really. Work wasn't stressful, life was good. But somehow, some part of me was not fulfilled. And I knew ultimately this wasn't the work for me. And I spent a long time wondering about this, actually 10 whole years, because in some ways, I liked my work. I certainly liked what I got to do outside of work, but still something was nagging at me, right? And I spent ages researching, should I move to another country? I'd already lived in 3 different cities in Germany by the time I finished there. But that didn't seem like it would necessarily be better. I also invested in property with the hopes of retiring early, and I looked at new career paths. Should I become a psychologist, an interior designer? And honestly, I can't even remember what else. At least in Germany, all of these meant going back to school for a minimum of 5 years, so it just didn't seem like it was going to work. And what I was trying to do was experience more freedom in my everyday life, specifically, really, the time that I was at work. And by the time this was all coming to a head, anyone I spoke to would basically tell me, you have a great life, great friends, an amazing apartment, you've got a cruisy job. It's not going to get any better than this. Just enjoy it. And even my closest friends told me this. But I knew it wasn't meant to be this way, so I made the decision to emigrate to Australia. Partly because I was done with European winters, and partly because I wanted to be in an English-speaking environment again, but also because I knew if I wanted to change career, it was going to be a whole lot easier because they didn't have all these restrictions about having to go back to school. So at this point, I entered into the world of business being a possibility. Australia is a really positive and open environment towards business. In Germany, having my own business seemed completely foreign, and why would I even do that and how would it work? It just wasn't a possibility. In Australia, I met people who were doing this already, really successful people, and it got me thinking. I also met my fiance, Adi, who also really wanted to have a business. So things were leading up to this, and my new IT job in Australia was honestly a complete nightmare. So I ended up quitting, and we decided we were just going to make this happen. We sat down, looked at our skills, and I spent honestly months with my head in business books, researching, figuring out how business models work, how you get started in business, what are the mechanics, how do you know if you're going to make money or not. And we then started a business in the automotive industry. So I did the IT stuff and Adi did the car stuff. And it went okay. We did make money, but ultimately I hated it. I hated it when the phone rang, and somehow I knew this wasn't it. It was just the best thing that we had thought of so far, but this still wasn't the path for me. While all this was happening, I was discovering the world of online business and coaching. And I started to see that while the business I was in could make money, it wasn't ultimately a fit for me. I didn't feel like I was moving people forward. And even though there was an environmental aspect to our business, it just wasn't the fit for me. But what could I do as a coach or an online business owner? I didn't feel like I had many skills, right, outside of programming and the IT world, which is what I was trying to leave. But I did see one possibility, and that was business ideas, business models, helping people get started in business. I had spent months researching and understanding how the mechanics of business work. I also had some business experience. I could see possibilities in the online Facebook groups I was in of how people could start their businesses, and I could see them struggling. But it did seem like a long shot, but I was determined, and I mean really determined, not to have to go back to work and get an IT job in Australia again, especially as we'd moved to a beautiful place in the country and I could not face the 3-hour round trip to the city again every day. Like, it just was not a possibility for me. So I decided to test this out. I offered free sessions. And at first, in all honesty, it felt awkward. I wondered if I was helping while I was doing these sessions. But people really liked them and I got a lot out of them. So I put together my very first offer, the Idea Generator. I launched my website and I started. At first, it was a little bumpy. I had a client here, some more clients there, a bit of a gap here. But the good thing about it was, though, because my clients were deciding on their business ideas and their niches, the very next step was, well, how do I start? So then business startup coaching was born. I then later moved into group programs, I did e-courses, and business has grown from there. And I'm going to be really transparent with this. It hasn't always been easy. In fact, starting a business has challenged me more than emigrating, working in countries where I had to learn to speak the language, getting divorced 10 years ago, and a whole bunch of other stuff that, life throws at us, right? It's been a journey getting here. And there are still days where the shit hits the fan and I just have to work out how to solve it because the buck stops with me and the days of going to my manager to sort out problems are over. but it is so, so worth it. As I'm recording this, it's a beautiful day outside. I'm looking forward to checking in with what my clients are up to. And I have 2 wonderful new people to speak to today who may end up being clients in one of my programs. Life is good. My pre-business life was also good, right? With some bumpy times along the way. But now it's better because now I get to do things my way. I get to call the shots. I get to decide how I work. I get to decide who I work with and how I want to run this gig, right? So what does this mean for you? I think more than anything, it means the past doesn't dictate the future. Just because you've been on a different path until now, or just because it hasn't worked out until now, it doesn't mean you can't adjust or change direction. Whether you've had entrepreneurial leanings before or not, it doesn't mean you can't do something with it now. Maybe your life didn't lead you in that direction to start with. It also means if you have an idea, it's worth testing it. Plus, your friends don't always know what's best for you, and if you think there's something better out there for you, there probably is. So that's the story of how I started my business. I hope it helps you wherever you are in your own story right now. Have a wonderful day. I'm looking forward to speaking to you soon. For now, I'm off outside to enjoy the sunshine. Thanks for listening to Your Business, Your Rules. I'm Kat LeBlanc. If you like this show, I'd love you to subscribe, share, and leave a review on iTunes. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, head over to my website at katleblanc.com. Until next time.